Hey everyone, happy Friday, Halloween weekend. This is another edition of Sports Speak. Eddie Kalegi here. Tim Moore's power just went out right before we were going to record, but fortunately, Rahil was waiting in the wings and he's here to join us today. One thing, Tim with no power has not been able to send the football picks, so we will just be posting those on Twitter tomorrow. But we have a lot to cover today, Rahil. And the first thing is the big news as a Mets fan. I am ecstatic. You can see Citi Field, the mural behind me, because after 36 years, we are finally freed from the bondage of the Wilpons. Steve Cohen officially buying the team. Bill de Blasio let it go through. The MLB owners let it go through. So Steve Cohen is here and ready to make some moves. So Raheel, I want to get your take on this. What do you see in the short term with the Mets right now, like next year with Steve Cohen? Do you see any much of a change for the organization next year, or do you think it's going to take a few years?
I'm not sure, Eddie, but obviously it's a breath of fresh air for all Mets fans around the world. And the Mets have a very talented roster. I think a lot of people tend to forget that with all the struggles they've had. They have a very talented roster. They have the capability of making a postseason push, even in a 162 game season. I remember we saw, not this past, but the last 162 game season, they made that push toward the end of the season where they got hot. So it's just about for them finding the consistency because they're a very streaky team, obviously. And the bullpen, I think the bullpen did look a little better, but it's still definitely a big question mark. But I can see them squeezing in a wild card. I mean, that's a real possibility.
My thing is, I don't know how much he's going to spend this off season because there's a lot of big free agents out there. And something I saw on Twitter that Anthony DiComo, the Mets reporter, noted, there's so many teams that are doing budget cuts right now because of the whole situation with the pandemic, or other teams that, they're letting guys go, while the Mets now have this whole lump of cash that they're going to be able to use. And when you have guys like Trevor Bauer or Francisco Lindor or JT Realmuto on the market who could all fit really well into this Mets team, I'm interested to see what Steve Cohen can do. But my main thing that I'm excited about, I don't know how well versed Steve Cohen is in baseball.
Yep.
I know he's a good businessman though, and it's an improvement from the Wilpons who knew nothing about baseball and nothing about money. So, at least you got one of those things taken care of. I hope Steve Cohen's business expertise translates to the baseball field. I know he's a longtime Mets fan and he wants to see this team succeed. In terms of contract extensions, because when you think about Alonso, McNeil, Conforto, they're all in position where they could get long-term extensions sometime in the future. If you were in Steve Cohen's position, who do you think earns an extension for the Mets?
I'm not sure because I'm not that big of a Met fan. I'm not a huge follower of the Mets, but so I don't know. I'm not sure, to be completely honest with you. I mean, obviously you're way more versed in this stuff than I am, so I want to get your opinion on who do you think deserves a long-term extension.
Well, here's my thing. Pete Alonso had that amazing rookie year, and then last year, aside from a couple games, was a mess. He still hit a lot of home runs, but his first year, he was flirting with a 300 average for a good part of the season. Last year, he could barely prep 200. So if he's just there to hit homers, I don't know about, his long-term worth. I know the Mets see him as a team leader. I still think Michael Conforto has proven himself time and time again, had his best statistical season last year, and now he's been with this team for 6 years. He's the only offensive player left from the 2015 World Series team. I think he's earned an extension. And I also think Jeff McNeil down the line, 2 years in the major leagues, he's hit over 300 in both of them, and he's really found himself as a staple on this team. But enough about the Mets. Let's focus on the World Series because it was eventful to say the least. Before we actually get to the games, the last few games, the Dodgers winning it, of course, the big story that kind of stole the scene after Game 6 was that Justin Turner tested positive. Well, his first test was inconclusive during the game. They informed the Dodgers that he tested positive. They pulled him out of the game in the ninth, and then Justin Turner returns to the field maskless to celebrate with the team. And of course, that caused all kinds of controversy on social media. Raheel, what do you make of the situation and how the MLB addressed it? pulling Turner out of the game and then letting him come out and just be with all the teammates maskless. Like, I don't know what to say here.
Yeah, I don't know how the MLB I don't know how the MLB or anyone per se lets that happen. I think, I mean, when he was taken out of the game, everyone was questioning whether he was injured or anything like that. But the fact that he came out maskless, luckily I don't think there was any other positive tests from the team itself. I know he was out there taking pictures with his wife and all that stuff. Luckily, his wife did not test positive. So that's okay. But I mean, it's unfortunate because this, ever since the MLB's kind of early struggles with the Marlins, then the Cardinals at one point, they did after that, they did a good job when it came to COVID testing. They didn't have a single one during the postseason. And for almost the fact that overshadows what, it was a great World Series and a great postseason. The fact that shadows, that kind of puts a dark cloud on the MLB again. It's just unfortunate. And I don't know how the MLB and how he was, I don't know how he was able to get back on the field. I don't know. I really can't. There's really no excuses for even letting him come back on the field.
And to me, the most surprising part was players like Mookie Betts and I think it was Corey Seager that were adamantly defending him in the press conference afterwards. Like, I mean, kind of own up to the mistake here. I mean, it was a miscommunication, obviously, somewhere between the MLB, the Dodgers, and Justin Turner. But regardless, let's focus on the games itself. I kind of thought the Rays had a chance after that dramatic ending to Game 4 where Kenley Jansen blew the save, but the Dodgers came back poised, and that's really what they did this whole postseason. They were able to cruise through the first two rounds, but the Braves, they're down 2-0 in the series. They come back and they score 11 runs in the first inning. Then they're down 3-1. They run off 3 straight wins, and they bounce back from both Rays losses with wins in the series. And Clayton Kershaw has finally proven that he can pitch in the World Series. So what do you make of this Dodgers team? First World Series since 1988, and Clayton Kershaw's overall legacy now that he's finally ridded himself of the criticism that he can't pitch in the playoffs.
Well, he's one of the great pitchers. Let's put it there. The one knock on him was he didn't have the World Series and he couldn't pitch in the postseason, but obviously, a couple of those games are inflated with the whole Astros cheating scandal in 2017. But that's got to feel great for him, and also for longtime Dodgers players. They've been so close so many years. Last year, with the Nationals losing that series in the divisional series, then losing back-to-back World Series against the 2018 sign-stealing Red Sox and the 2017 Astros sign-stealing. So it's great for Dodgers fans. I think no one doubted that they were probably the best team all throughout the season. They were razor sharp when it came to consistency. And I mean, their hitting with 2 outs was just incredible throughout this whole season. Remember, in that 11-run inning, I believe 7 or 8 of those runs came with 2 outs. Mm-hmm. So how they're able to keep the cycle going. And I know people are going to question Kevin Cash for the decision to take out Blake Snell. And I personally, I don't know, I obviously didn't agree with it, but something has to be said about the Rays offense that game, because besides Randy Arozarena's 2 hits and his 1 home run, the Rays got nothing on offense that game. And yeah, and again, it's going to be questioned, why did Kevin Cash take Blake Snell out of the game? And because Cash is an analytics guy, and that team is very scripted with the way it goes about its bullpen. But again, some criticism has to go to the Rays offense. In an elimination game, you only score 1 run. That's extremely tough to win.
And this is why this Dodgers team is going to go down in history as one of the great offensive teams, because now this is the second time in recent years in the postseason that they've caused an otherwise uncriticized manager to kind of outthink himself. If you remember back, I think it was 2017 when they played the Brewers in the NLCS, and Craig Counsell took Wade Miley out of the game after he gave 4-pitch walk to the first batter, and then he replaced him with Brent Suter, and everyone was like, "Whoa, what is this for?" And now again, Kevin Cash, and everybody was very pleased with how well Kevin Cash has done this year. Because as I talked about with Tim last week, the Rays are not a team that has a bunch of superstars.
Oh no, yeah,
yeah. First of all, their offense is mainly a bunch of no names or young prospects. And then the pitching staff, of course, you got the Cy Young winner in Snell. Other than that, it's a lot of no names as well. So he's been able to piece a lineup together. They've also battled injuries throughout the year and still finished 40-20. So, but this Dodgers offense, he got frazzled late in the game. And you think about, in an elimination game, you consider all hands on deck when it comes to the pitching staff. And the Rays bullpen, I know they hadn't been as good against the Dodgers as they were the rest of the postseason, but as Kevin Cash said once himself, he's got a lot of guys in his arsenal who can throw 98. So, I mean, I still think you should have left Blake Snell in there for at least one more batter. I think that's pretty undisputed, but, logically, you can kind of see where he was going, but go ahead.
The only knock I would say is Nick Anderson, ever since he pitched that flawless Game 5 against the Yankees, has had trouble finding the zone. And what happens the first at bat, batter Mookie Betts gets behind in the count 2-0, throws a high 2-0 fastball, and Mookie Betts takes it down the line for a double. So that's my one criticism on that. But I feel like in that game, you just have to ride your best players. And clearly Blake Snell was pitching out of his mind. It probably would have been the game of his life at that point.
I mean, he was just cruising. That one inning where he struck out Seager, Betts, and Bellinger 1, 2, 3. Nobody was getting them out 1, 2, 3, much less striking them out the whole postseason. So, as a Yankees fan, I got to ask you: with the Yankees, they came so close against Tampa. If they had made the World Series, now we see how Tampa did against the Dodgers. How do you think they would have done?
Oh, they wouldn't have beaten the Dodgers. No. Really? Dodgers would have beaten the Yankees easily. I'm telling you. Yankees offense was too inconsistent. That bullpen, they relied on the bullpen. They relied on the home run too much, and the fact that with how well the Dodgers hit with 2 outs, it just wouldn't have coupled well. Besides maybe Garrett Cole winning a game, I honestly couldn't see Tanaka, whether they wanted to start Happ or Garcia or anyone who they threw out there, even if they threw, an opener, I couldn't have seen them winning maybe more than 2 games at best. So, and, I said it after the series, Tampa was the better team than the Yankees. They were better all year. And I feel like the Yankees, with seeing the way the Dodgers played and how they hit, I don't think the Yankees would have beaten them.
So last thing on baseball, the expanded postseason certainly caused a lot of excitement. So 2021, it's going to be a more normal year. It should be a full season. Do you think that they should stick with the expanded postseason going forwards?
I'm okay with it as long as they don't add the rule where the teams get to pick your opponents. That's my one knock. If they want to do an extended postseason, fine, you can do it. It makes for more excitement because, like we all said, baseball with the 162 game season, it's so, and how many teams make the playoffs is so little. It's only the best of the best. But then you add these other teams like Houston, 29-30, they get hot, go to the American League Championship Series. I'm okay with it. I'm all up for it. And I know I wasn't big on it at first, but I'm up for the extra inning rule starting with a runner on second. I'm up for it as well. I just don't want the rule where you get to pick your opponent. That's the only thing I wouldn't want. But as far as the extended playoffs goes, I'm okay with it. Yeah,
I'm still a little on the fence about continuing with the extra innings. I don't know. I kind of like letting a game play out on its own. But, I am in agreement with you. I did like the expanded postseason more than I thought I would. And I think it's something the major leagues can consider because, those 3-game series were intense because even a team like the Dodgers, I know they didn't get tested this year, but if another team playing against them just steals 2 games, it's over. We saw that with the Cubs. I mean, nobody thought the Miami Marlins would beat the Cubs, and the Marlins just put together back-to-back solid games, and boom, there went Chicago, who were considered one of the teams that could compete for the NL pennant. So let's shift gears quickly to the NBA because this Nets coaching staff is now becoming the weirdest mix of personalities. All of a sudden now, the 2006 Phoenix Suns are basically in charge of the Nets because you've got Steve Nash. Then you get the news earlier this week that Stoudemire is his lead assistant. Now Mike D'Antoni is coming back, and you've got Ime Udoka. So now you have 3 players and 1 coach from the Phoenix Suns from about 15 years ago that are going to be leading this team. And the two main ones, Nash and supposedly his lead assistant, Stoudemire, have no coaching experience whatsoever. At least the other two have some experience. The one thing, I was talking about this with my dad earlier, and he made a good point that the one good thing about having D'Antoni there, if Steve Nash is a total bust as coach, you have someone there who has experience as a winning coach with several teams before who can kind of fit in and kind of, take control of the reins a little bit. So how do you feel about this Nets team? Because I really think this is just boom or bust at this point with the players, the characters, and now this really weird piecemeal coaching staff.
I honestly I don't think anyone has any idea of what to make of them. I mean, it's definitely boom or bust, especially when you go out and you sign Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. And also, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, they're wild cards when it comes to their attitude. You see Kyrie making weird statements like, we don't need a coach. We're more than one player away from the championship. Like, I don't know. And it's a weird situation, especially, the Steve Nash hire came out of nowhere. Honestly, and the Kenny Atkinson, firing or split came out of nowhere as well. As far as D'Antoni being if D'Antoni does get promoted to the head coach, I would like to see how it works, because Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, one of them is not going to be okay with sitting in the corner and waiting for the ball. Chris Paul, when he had Chris Paul in Houston, Chris Paul was at least nice enough to give it to James Harden and say, okay, you know what? Let's run everything through you. Again, same thing. Russell Westbrook and Harden, they had a lot of clashes on the court. That's why Westbrook played some of the minutes with the second team to be so ball dominant. But I don't know how that's going to work, because Kevin Durant nor Kyrie Irving is going to stand in the corner and just wait for the ball. That's not how they operate. So if D'Antoni becomes head coach, we'll see what happens. But again, you mentioned it, Steve Nash, no coaching experience. So I think they're probably going to – I know D'Antoni's in the assistant position, but they're probably going to lean on him heavily when it comes to maybe if the season starts to go, a little sideways at some point. But it's going to be very interesting, to say the least, especially with all the other questions in the East, whether Giannis stays in Milwaukee or what's the situation with Doc Rivers in Philadelphia. And I believe now Daryl Morey is the general manager there. So there's a lot of questions, and I'm excited for it.
Yeah, it's funny. Miami's the team who made it to the NBA Finals this year, and they seem like the only team that's sound without any questions out of all the Eastern Conference powerhouses. You could also consider Boston in that group, but there's a lot of wild cards here with Milwaukee, with the Sixers, and with the Nets. And my last thing on this whole Nets thing is when you look at the coaches and then you look at the players. D'Antoni, you mentioned how he ran the offense with the Rockets. It was just a three-pointer every time. But when you had all these guys, Nash and him and Stoudemire together, that's when they really started the high pace, 5 seconds, got to get a shot up offense. And when you have a Nets team right now that has two superstars coming off injuries, one coming off a serious leg injury, and a lot of big men like Jared Allen and Claxton in the regular rotation, and DeAndre Jordan, I don't know how smoothly that can work, especially when Joe Harris is your only three-point shooter. So I think there's still changes that have to be made in free agency. And one thing I do want to say, this is going to be such a frenzy come free agency, because the draft November 18th, they want to try to get the season started by Christmas. So that's going to be a wild couple week stretch getting everything set up.
Another thing I look for, Eddie, is, the Nets played pretty well in the bubble. They were working the ball. They had so much team chemistry. I want to see if this situation is similar to the one in Boston, where when Kyrie and Gordon Hayward went down, the team really played together, gelled. The ball wasn't sticking to anyone's hands. Got to, it was a weak Eastern Conference, but they got to a Game 7, but they just fell in love with the three and it didn't fall. And LeBron ends up going to the finals. But I want to see if it's the same situation, whereas you stick two ball-dominant players in there, whether it's going to still work. Because we saw that Celtics team, the locker room was in turmoil. They had so much talent. They were so inconsistent. So I want to see how that plays out and whether it's a similar situation to the one in Boston.
So I want to wrap up with this on the NFL. Week 8, we're already almost halfway through the season. I want to just get from you just a couple predictions or things that you're excited to see this weekend in football. As I said, me and Tim's predictions this week will be posted on Twitter probably tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. But for right now, what are some things you're excited to see this week in the NFL?
Well, I've highlighted two games. I've highlighted the Sunday night matchup of the Cowboys and the Eagles because both teams are a dumpster fire, but you can't take your eyes off it. And also, these are the top two teams in the NFC. So, Eddie, your Eagles, for how bad they've been with a win over, whether it's Andy Dalton or whether it's their third string QB, you got the Eagles are pretty much apparent. I think whoever wins this game is probably going to win the division tonight in Week 8, just with how much losing they've done. And of course, the game that everyone has highlighted, it's the Steelers versus the Ravens. Ravens 5-1, Steelers 6-0. Obviously, the Baltimore-Pittsburgh rivalry. So I like that game. I'm ashamed it's only at 1:00, so we probably won't get to see it because the Jets are probably going to be on here in this area. So I'm excited to see that one. And of course, I'll have to suffer through my Giants playing the Buccaneers on Monday night. So that'll be fun. But yeah.
But, I got to say for the Eagles, if you cannot beat Ben DiNucci and the Cowboys, I'm a little concerned here. So hopefully the Eagles can win. Steelers-Ravens is a great matchup. Steelers now the lone unbeaten team in the NFL against a Ravens team that has been so strong, except for that one game against the Chiefs where they got manhandled by Mahomes. So, and these teams square off again on Thanksgiving. And I was looking at the Thanksgiving schedule. Thank goodness the Steelers and Ravens have a game on Thanksgiving because the other two games are Texans and Detroit. And who's Dallas playing? Are they playing Washington?
They're playing Washington, but of course, Detroit and Dallas always play on Thanksgiving.
Yes, but of course this year also, Detroit and Dallas are both a mess, and their opponents aren't anything to be excited about either. It's going to be 4 teams under 500. So thankfully, Pittsburgh and Baltimore are the nightcap on Thanksgiving, but big matchup this week when those teams square off. So next week, me and Tim, I'm off of school a lot. We got election day, so we might actually get 2 shows out next week. So stay tuned for that. We'll be talking NASCAR, football, any other news from baseball free agency starting, NBA news, and more. Until then, I'm Eddie Kalegi. Rahil, thanks for coming on once again today.
Anytime.
All right, so we'll see you next time. Happy Halloween from Sports Speak.